Hey fellow music fans, welcome back to Psychology of Rock. If you're new here, my name's Nena, and today I'm going to be dissecting and offering a psychological and theoretical analysis of the masterpiece 46 and 2 by the band Tool, which comes off of the 1996 album Ænima. I have to start by saying that Tool is just a band that you have to respect, not only for their music, but also for their artistic integrity. I've been following the band since the single Sober came out in the early 1990s, and I continue to be impressed by their very innovative and cerebral music. And if you're already a fan of the band, you have probably noticed that Tool's lyrics are often incredibly profound and introspective with hidden meanings and messages, and that they commonly explore very complex and insightful psychological themes. I think that's one of the factors that really draws people into the band. I know that was definitely the case for me, especially because I'm a huge fan of analytical psychology, especially the work of Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, who I have studied extensively. And there are just an abundance of Jung's archetypes and theories that are represented in Tool's lyrics. I also know that many people say that Tool's music and lyrics have significantly impacted their life because they can relate to it so much, which is something else I can absolutely understand. And I was initially going to make one big video that included all the psychological theories of Carl Jung that we can find in Tool lyrics, but I quickly realized there are just too many of them, even within one song, so I'm going to divide it up into several different videos. But I wanted to start with the concept of the shadow because I think it's something that we can all really identify with. It's something that we all struggle with within our lifetime. And I also felt that the concept was so perfectly illustrated within this song that I just had to start with 46 and 2. So I'm going to start by giving an overview of the concept, and then I'll discuss the specific phrases of the song that demonstrate this concept both in very direct and also in very clever ways. I'd also love to hear your thoughts about this song and about Tool in general, so don't hesitate to leave a comment down below. I think this song in particular tends to affect people on a very deep level, and I also think that although music evokes an emotional response in all of us, people that really appreciate music and who are very connected to music tend to also have a greater understanding of how much it can really impact them and how transformative it can really be. So again, I would love to hear your thoughts, and with that being said, let's dive into the shadow self. So the concept of the shadow is an archetype. It is a universal motif that is built into all human beings that represents the blind spot of the psyche that contains all the parts of ourselves that we find to be unacceptable and therefore relegate to the darkness of the unconscious mind. It's the sum total of all the parts of ourselves that we don't want other people to see, including ourselves, that is made up of our repressed impulses, weaknesses, ideas, desires, and instincts that are in conflict with societal norms or even with our own morals or values. Sometimes it's characterized as simply being our dark side, but I think a more accurate description is that the shadow is our disowned or rejected self, which contains all the parts of ourselves that we deny. So it certainly can contain our dark side, but also our past hurts and our past traumas that we feel are too painful to face. This concept is used a lot in literature and certainly in rock and metal lyrics, maybe using different pseudonyms or different metaphors, but the central theme is definitely there. In fact, you can look through your playlist and probably find this theme time and time again, maybe not illustrated as beautifully as in 46 and 2, but if you look for it, you will definitely find it. The concept of the shadow as we know it was formulated, of course, by Carl Jung, but the basic idea was actually represented quite well long before this, most notably in the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. In the story, Dr. Jekyll represents all the respectable parts of his personality, and Mr. Hyde represents all the repressed evil urges or his shadow self. And while it would be highly unusual for us to have a shadow self that is as destructive as Mr. Hyde, most of us still tend to deal with our shadow by putting up psychological defenses and repressing these characteristics and denying the existence of the shadow. But ironically, for most people, when the shadow remains unconscious, it causes a lot of pain and suffering in their life because the repressed parts of our personality don't just disappear, they will just simply function without our conscious awareness and will often result in very self-destructive behaviors. But as Carl Jung explains, when we reveal and accept our shadow and our own imperfections, we can start to become whole, and that internal war we feel inside of ourselves can start to subside. We start to realize that in everyone and everything there is both darkness and light, and when we have acceptance and awareness of our own darkness, it no longer controls our life. And when we finally start to act on this understanding, it is referred to as the integration of the shadow, which is the process that is so profoundly and perfectly described in 46 and 2. So let's go ahead and take a look at the lyrics of the song. So right at the beginning of the song, Maynard is talking about shedding his skin, or in other words, the protective layer that we create around ourselves that keeps us from having to look at our shadow or having to deal with our old wounds and trauma. He's sharing his awareness that he can't see his shadow until he sheds this skin by acknowledging his past hurts, or as he puts it, picking at his scabs. He understands that he has to look to his old tendencies to gain insight about himself, and he cleverly uses the word muscles here, which is the perfect word choice because what is our muscle memory? It's the things that we've done so many times that they no longer require conscious thought. A lot of times we're able to hide from our shadow by using defense mechanisms that modify our perception of reality so we're not disturbed by excessively painful feelings or drives. One way we commonly do this is to condemn and criticize other people so we don't have to focus on our own faults or negative tendencies. And when our ego is protected by defense mechanisms in this way, it becomes a lot easier for us to see the imperfections in other people and ignore our own. So I think what he's really saying here is that he's going through the painful process of reopening all these wounds and getting beneath the surface of his personality so that he can face his shadow, and that he knows he's going to have to re-examine all his old tendencies and methods and perspectives and ultimately let go of these defense mechanisms if he's going to evolve as a person. In the next part of the song, he describes himself crawling on his belly and wallowing in his own confused and insecure delusions, looking for his truth, showing that he is now aware that a metamorphosis is necessary in order to finally become whole and heal himself. And I also think he's kind of comparing himself to a snake here who would also be crawling on their belly and shedding their skin in order to evolve. A line that always hits me in this section in particular is how he says he needs to contemplate what he's been clinging to, because I think so often we don't allow ourselves to question our beliefs and our actions. So we end up repeating behaviors and patterns in our life that don't serve us because we're afraid of the temporary pain that comes from making changes. And then he finally makes a reference to the title of the song, saying that 46 and 2 is ahead of him. Now this refers to a theoretical new evolution in which some humans would have a chromosomal composition of 46 and 2, which according to this theory would enable them to reach a new plane of consciousness. Now this has absolutely nothing to do with the theories of Carl Jung, but it's very interesting all the same, and it shows where his mindset is at, what he is aiming for. And in these last few phrases, he's talking about stepping through his shadow and softening his armor, or getting rid of his defense mechanisms, so that he can begin the process of integration and finally accept all the parts of himself. He goes on to say that he chooses to live and love and grow and really persevere, but he also says that he will fear and cry and even hate, showing that he is no longer going to deny these aspects of himself and these very real aspects of human life. I think he's really saying here that he sees his darkness and he accepts that it is a part of who he is. However, he's not going to allow it to stop him from obtaining his evolution into consciousness. So he's going to work with the shadow. Instead of denying it, he is now going to step through it. So really the entire experience that he is describing here is in perfect alignment with Carl Jung's theory of the integration of the shadow, bringing our darkness into light, into consciousness, so that it does not control our life. And this is a process that is certainly not easy. It requires us to reopen past wounds and revisit past trauma a lot of the time. But I think this is why so many people resonate with a song. This is an experience they too have shared it. Jungian, this is a very familiar struggle and part of the reason why I think the song is such a masterpiece. So those are my thoughts on 46 and 2, but I would love to hear yours, so don't forget to leave a comment down below. Also, please let me know if there are further Tool songs you'd like to hear analyzed. I do have an entire list that I plan to get to, but I would be happy to add to it. I hope you found today's analysis to be interesting. Don't forget to like this video and to subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I will see you next week.